Hello, my name is Nick Carroll and welcome to my first Q&A video. So I will be making a quick series of videos where I answer some of my questions that I've received on a number of my videos. The very first video that I'm going to produce right now, this one, will be on my original Acer C7 Chromebook. I did an unboxing and review video on each and I received some questions for that. So I figured this is as good a time as any to go ahead and answer those. My next video will actually be on my AMD Kaveri PC build. I received a few questions on that and I figured I might as well address them. And last but not least will be sort of a miscellaneous Q&A on some of my other videos that I produced. I feel there's a few odds and ends there that should be addressed as well. So let's get started. Okay, so regarding my Acer C7 Chromebook videos, one of the questions I was asked was this: that 16 gigabytes of RAM may theoretically be possible for the hardware involved, but I thought they were still shipping Chrome OS as a 32-bit OS. Does Chrome OS support PAE? So I'll explain what that is. So the Chrome operating system, which runs on the Chromebook Pixel, is actually a 64-bit version of the operating system. So what that means is that can address far more RAM than a 32-bit operating system can typically address. Your 32-bit operating system typically addresses only 4 gigs of RAM. As far as I know, all the other Chromebooks run a 32-bit version of the operating system. However, all Chromebooks, 32 gigs or otherwise, well, certainly the 32 gigs, they use a PAE kernel. Now, what PAE is physical address extension, and it basically allows the Chromebook or any operating system that uses PAE can address more than 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, most of these Chromebooks, come with 2 or 4 gigs of RAM, but some of them, like my Acer C7, are actually upgradable, and you can actually exceed 4 gigs of RAM inside. So like on my Chromebook, the reason why he mentioned 16 gigs of RAM, I mentioned in my videos that this Chromebook that I have right here is actually upgradable. Like, here's a Chromebook. If you look right here, this whole bottom end is you can remove, and the RAM is easily accessible. And the two memory modules, you can put in 2 8 gig memory modules for a total of 16 gigs total that can be recognized on this. My model actually has 4 gigs of RAM, but that's certainly possible. Now, the one limitation that you have when you're dealing with a 32-bit operating system using PAE is that no single process can exceed 2 gigs of RAM. That's my understanding. I've not tried testing that. But on Chromebooks, you're generally not dealing with any one process that's going to utilize 2 gigabytes of RAM. Mostly you're dealing with lots of little, like each and every tab is its own separate process, and you have all these little extensions and things that are running. So generally, this is not an issue. So if you are lucky enough to have a Chromebook where you can physically upgrade the RAM, you're not going to have an issue regarding memory addressability. Another user writes, is this a good notebook for cyber school? I'm not exactly sure what cyber school is, but I'll say that this is a good notebook for school in that you can use wireless connectivity, to connect to the internet. You can store and access your web-based programs that way. There are a lot of programs where you can store data either locally or you can cache it locally, and whenever you do access the cloud, the Chromebook will essentially synchronize with that. I use my Chromebook mostly at home, sometimes at work, and occasionally at college when I was when I took some courses, and it worked just fine. Offline apps have been a thing for over a year now, and in my opinion, this is just fine for school. Another user writes, do you consider this to be a security virus 100% free? I think he means, is this 100% virus free? I'm not currently aware of any viruses specifically for Chromebooks, and a lot of the exploits and malware that's out there on the internet are basically used to exploit Flash and or Java or SQL, or generally things you would access from a Windows PC. A lot of your Macs and Android devices, for example, and your iOS devices are typically pretty safe from those kind of exploits, and I would include the Chromebook with that as well. Also, since at least at this point in time, the Chromebook is relatively unused, like it's a relatively small market. So I don't think there's a lot of Chromebook specific exploits out there. Certainly I would say this is 99% secure. And if you're not looking for trouble or accessing a bunch of wares or suspicious sites, you're probably pretty darn safe with this. Another user writes, hello, great video, well done, mate. For school, which Chromebook would you recommend? Just to be honest, I think most of these Chromebooks would be just fine. I mean, this one I bought for a couple $100. I spent another $100 upgrading to a 64 gig solid state drive, as well as another 2 gig memory module, so I brought it up to 4 gigs. And this has worked great for me in the last year that I've owned this. I think pretty much any Chromebook you buy nowadays is going to be even faster than this one, and they'll be just fine. Even the brand new ARM ones, ARM Chromebooks that Samsung has produced, I think they're going to be just fine for school or anything else. Another user writes, do you know where is the recycle bin and where is local disk C? Okay, so this is not using a Windows-based operating system. It uses Chrome OS, which is loosely based on a form of Linux, and it's got its own overlay, essentially, or a desktop. And anyway, so essentially there is no recycle bin. You can throw everything into the trash, but there's no C drive. You do actually have a downloads folder, and that's where you store stuff locally, but the file structure is not readily visible. There is a file manager, but you're really only going to see a folder and then other devices that you have plugged in, as well as your Google Drive. So it's a pretty simplified interface. I mean, it's more than what you get on iOS, for example, but it's pretty darn simple. It's not very hard to use. Another user writes, why don't you blink? And does anyone know if there is an external Bluetooth with this Acer? I generally don't need to blink a lot. That's something I do when I'm nervous or under stress. I don't know. Anyways, regarding the other question they asked about Bluetooth, initially, even though the hardware has Bluetooth support on this particular Chromebook did not have support for Bluetooth like some of the other Chromebooks, but they built it in. It took I don't know, about 6 months after release, this finally received Bluetooth support. So most Chromebooks now have Bluetooth support, and that's really a non-issue. So that's going to do it for this first edition of Q&A. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.